Let's go on Abyssal as we're preparing for Gimmel Tammuz, Reb's Feed of Barrel Gross of Borough Park, New York. Says here the unknown benefactor, and this is from uh, the Rebbe Will Find a Way, which are first-hand accounts of the Rebbe's brachas and guidance after Gimel Tammuz. For those of you who are not familiar, we're talking about the teacher Menachem Mendel Schneerson, and these are first-hand accounts of his blessings and guidance after the passing of the Lubavitch Rebbe. My soul tells me these are the right words, so we've said them. I don't know how else to explain it. Uh, or perhaps we'll allow the story to explain. Okay. Approximately 3 years ago, my financial situation took a terrible downturn. This is Reps Feed Dove Barrel Gross in Borough Park, New York. But I'm sure someone in the room or that's watching this now can relate to having a terrible financial downturn. Life seems to give these types of things. And I'm going to continue along, but I'm ready to go into the Mayim Rabim right now when we talk about these things. At any rate, okay. So approximately 3 years ago, my financial situation took a terrible downturn. I was out of a job and I could not afford my monthly rent. And after 4 months of being unable to pay, I racked up a bill of $4,000. Not having the means to pay even a fraction of the money, my family faced an imminent eviction. The thought of being left out on the street without a roof over our heads had me completely distraught. Still, I kept my predicament to myself and shared it with virtually no one. Late one Thursday night, I drove with a friend to the ohel, which is the resting place of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, which is interesting enough. I mean, as we try to counsel ourselves through the some things I'll just leave. I mean, if it wasn't for ohel, then it'd be a little different, right? I mean, but that's not what we're talking about here. We know what we. So late one Thursday night, I drove with a friend to the ohel to seek the Rebbe's bracha. So it's in Queens, New York. It's inside of a cemetery. You go into this area, and it is set up with a welcoming center, and it's common practice in Judaism that you could go and make prayers at the gravesite of righteous people. They're called tzaddikim, okay? And we seek the bracha, which is like a blessing. Um, we learned something interesting in the Chumash today. It's saying that um, you know, sometimes we want God to be partial to us. And you typically would think about favor, but it's talking about when we receive a blessing from God, that we need to both be the blessing that comes from God. It has to be also protected. Like if you give a gift to someone, you need to give them some protection for that too. You know, or a robber could come and rob you for that. So when God gives us a gift, when it's saying that God should be partial to us, amongst other things, the way that God should bless us, it's by protecting us, and not just providing a favor and endlessly, but by keeping a hedge of protection around us. So the guy's asking for the blessing. Back to the story. We arrived after 11 o'clock. It is a 24-hour place, and interesting. And as my partner was in a hurry, I spent no more than 5 minutes inside the ohel. I poured my heart out, begging the very heavens for a miracle that would save me and my family from our plight. Pardon me. With a considerably lighter heart, I returned with my friend to Borough Park. I'm not sure the distance of that. New Yorkers know 20-minute drive, an hour from Queens to Borough Park, I guess. I don't know the routes. Don't go up there. Instead of going home, I made my way directly to the large Belzer, which is a type of shul, this sect of people on the corner of 15th and 51st, where I regularly attended a Thursday night shiur, or like a lecture class. It was already 12:30 when I walked in, and the shiur was nearing its end. I was immediately approached by an acquaintance of mine and fellow shiur attendee, someone else who goes to the thing. This guy's name is being noted as Reb Shia Shapira. In a conversation with a Hasidic Shadera, Reb Shia Shea shared his part of the story. The Hasidic Shadera is like a magazine, if I'm correct, and they're quoting the magazine, I guess. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for subscribing. It says here that it was in the middle of our late Thursday night shiur in the upstairs of the Belzer base midrash. It was in this class at this particular group, these Belzers and their synagogue, if you will, when a man who appeared to be a Satmar Chassid, a little different of the Belzer, and a little different, maybe different socks or something. I don't know, same Jews, different habits, different teachers, I guess, rabbis, if you will. They ask AI, I wouldn't know what the heck the difference, Belzers and the Satmars. I just think, can we all just get along, So the Satmar Chassid strode in and inquired as to the whereabouts of Reb Beryl Gross, who is a regular shiur attendee. He'd always be there. I got up to check if he was perhaps in another part of the building, and when I couldn't find him, the man whom I had previously met on a few occasions and knew only by the name Landau handed me a thick-sealed envelope and asked me to ensure that Reb Beryl personally receives it. When Reb Beryl showed up an hour later, I dutifully handed him the envelope and briefly told him what had happened. Reb Beryl continues now from, went to the magazine, now it's back inside of Reb Beryl's. And Derer is the one who produced this book, so I guess they're acknowledging an excerpt from their magazine to the book, and now the guy's telling the story. Reb Shia handed me a thick envelope and told me someone had come an hour ago and delivered it for me. I went off to the side to inspect the mysterious envelope's contents, and lo and behold, the envelope contained a wad of bills amounting to $3,000, enough to cover 3/4 of the debt I owed my landlord. Utterly shocked, I rushed back to Reb Shia and interrogated him as to the identity of my mysterious benefactor, but besides that his last name was Landau, he himself did not know anything about him. I personally was not acquainted with anyone by the name Landau, and I certainly could not fathom how he would possibly be aware of my predicament, as I had told almost nobody about it. A quick calculation brought me to the realization that this stranger had delivered the envelope a mere 15 minutes after I left the ohel. The next few days, I went about with a mixture of disbelief and immense joy at seeing how swiftly Hashem, the Most High God, had helped me with my situation through the Rebbe's brachas, his blessing. Let's go on just a pinch more, because I'm not sure that we can really grasp. I'm not sure. I'm not sold yet, I'm not sold. And I'm on the property. I'd like, what I'm saying? I'm down. I'm not sold. Israel Shudler, Chicago, Illinois, relates, just in time. I emigrated with my family from Russia to Israel in 5750, which is the year 1990. And 14 years later, in 5764, which is the year 2004, I moved to Chicago, says Israel Schindler, Mr. Yisrael. I think that would be his name. In 5770, 2010, I decided to go into the food business, something I had already been involved in while living in Israel. I rented a storefront in the French market in downtown Chicago, which was owned by a French Jew named Mr. Bezadan, and opened a restaurant called Presto, where my son and I sold shawarma, falafel, and other Israeli cuisine. The business was successful. One Friday, two yeshiva students, like I guess, high school age, yeshiva, if I'm correct, stopped by my store, and I called out to them with a hearty Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, uh, Shabbat being the seventh day of the week. Surprised, they inquired whether I was Jewish, and when I replied in the affirmative, they asked me if I would like to lay tefillin, the fluorescerites, the blocks, Deuteronomy 6:4, and you shall bind them as a sign. It's not 6:4, it's like 6:6 or 6:9. You should bind them as a sign on your arm and on your head. Okay, the tefillin. To which I readily agreed. They explained that they were from the local Chabad yeshiva and visited many Jewish stores in the area Friday to offer local Jewish men an opportunity to lay the tefillin, or I would call it probably to wrap tefillin, but it's more, standard like lay, whatever. Somebody else could explain that. The Chabad yeshiva being like, so we talked about Belzer, we talked about Satmar, then now we're talking about Chabad. And then, so Yisrael Bressinger and Avraham Baron began to visit me each week, and a warm friendship soon developed. So these boys come to him, they meet him the one time, and then they come back. They would stop by for a few minutes to chat, say a few words on the week's Parsha, which is the Torah reading for that week that everybody is unified on, that repeats itself through the course of a year through the first 5 books of the Bible, Parsha. Wrap tefillin, okay, the laying, and occasionally even pull me into dance to a joyful Jewish tune. In the meantime, the business began to take a toll on me. 2 years have passed, and although we weren't doing too badly, the work involved in managing the restaurant proved to be too much for me, so I decided to sell off the whole business. I posted ads in the local papers, and I also relied on word of mouth, but there was no interest. 6 months went by with no progress, and I grew very impatient. I even began to consider closing shop without selling, even though this course of action would result in great financial loss. At this point, I planned an extended trip to visit my family in Israel. I booked a ticket for February and made the trip my deadline. If nobody bought the restaurant before my trip, I would close the eatery and relinquish my renter's contract. The strain and frustration were taking a toll on me, and although I would lose a lot of money, there was no way I could continue to manage a business like this. One day, about 2 weeks before the cutoff date, my 2 yeshiva friends, the boys from the Chabad, pleasantly surprised me and showed up at my store in the middle of the week. When I asked them what the change in schedule was all about, they explained that they would be traveling to New York for the weekend together with their entire yeshiva, with the whole school, for what's called Yid Shavat. We'll talk about that another time. It's a holiday. This is a time when the Rebbe took the leadership of the Chabad, the Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, and the blessings we're talking about here. And not wanting to skip their weekly visit, they decided to come earlier. So after wrapping the tefillin and chatting a little, they let me know that many of the people they visited weekly were giving them letters to the Rebbe, which they would bring to the ohel. We were talking about the ohel, right? You go to the place, you write your letter, and then, you read it there, or go, you pour out your heart, or if you can't go, so you'll send. Nowadays, we have a website. If I was on top of it, I'd put the link in the thing. You can just Google it, OHEL, ohel lubavitch, lubavitch. I'll try to get the link in there for you. Of course, I had heard of the Rebbe and even knew a story that had happened with a friend of mine with whom I worked together in the food business back in Israel. My friend had related that for years he and his wife had been childless until they went to the Rebbe to receive a dollar and a blessing, and they were blessed with children. I also knew of the Rebbe's legendary love and care for every Jew, regardless of background and affiliation. I was overjoyed by the boy's suggestions and felt moved that one could still have the opportunity to write to the Rebbe today. I sat down and wrote a letter describing in detail the struggles with my business venture and my attempts at selling it. I wrote how I wasn't able to handle the stress and strain the business was having on me. So I asked the Rebbe to please help me sell the business. The boys took my letter and went on their way. 2 days later, a Mexican man entered my store and inquired as to whether I was selling the business. He must have seen the sign outside and he wanted to negotiate the price. I told him I was ready to give him a good deal as my deadline was 2 weeks away and I wanted the transaction to be quick and easy. He told me he would think about it. The following day, he returned and agreed to my terms and conditions. We drew up a contract, and within 2 days, just days before my self imposed cutoff date, the transaction was complete with the full sum deposited in my account. I couldn't believe my good fortune. For more than 6 months, I had tried in every way possible to sell my business with zero success. And within a few days after writing to the Rebbe, I had made a sale from start to finish. I'm not sure I'm convinced yet. One tough thing about live, you can't pause. So you just gotta stick with me through this for 1 second. I need to speak with my wife very briefly, so thank you for your patience. I'll try to make it briefly. Last time I called my wife, we put it on mute, and I don't know what happened, but anyway. Love you. Okay. I'll talk to you, my love. All right, love. All right. I guess ultimately the way we can convince ourselves, let's take one more story. I noticed the next page is Rabbi Eliezer Snyderman. It says Brooklyn, New York. I can't really speak for the Holy Rabbi myself, but I do know him. And I'll read his account here. And I've met him in person multiple times. And let's see if he can convince me that this is a timely pledge. And I'm not doubting. I'm saying like objectively, like when I read that story, like if I had never heard about this, I'm not impressed. You know what I'm saying? I'm not that I'm not impressed. I'm just like, wow. But I mean, like you guys really believe it. You really believe it. Let's see if we can find what Rabbi Snyderman would like to add. We'd be very blessed to just call him right now. But he got his phone number right here. I got his email. I can find his phone number real quick too. Probably got it. I merited to serve as the Rebbe Shliach to the University of Delaware for 23 years. I've always attempted. He was the rabbi at the school. You know, Shliach is like a messenger. He's delegated to work for 23 years at this University of Delaware with the high school, with the college kids, aged for 23 years. I didn't know that about him. I've always attempted to keep a connection with the students I have come in contact with, even after they graduate and move on with their lives. So was the case with Jason, the real name withheld upon request. And as we continue to just go along, speaking of Jason, want to wish my brother a happy birthday, Theodore Jason, Ben Homer Doler, and who will be celebrating the anniversary of his death on the Rosh Kodesh Tammuz, and who had his what would have been his 49th birthday on Shabbat on Saturday. So continuing along, Jason, this guy in the story, not my brother Theodore, Jason. Even as he graduated and started a family and began his career working as an agent for a large Manhattan firm, we kept in touch and spoke often. One day, Jason called with some upsetting news. He explained to me that employees in the business in which he works are paid a commission from each new client they acquire for the company. Due to the then recent market collapse of 2008, business was slow, but worse was the fact that he had not managed to pick up a single client the entire year. He was sure his days at the firm were numbered. Of course, I had no business advice for him, but I immediately offered to drive up to New York the following day and take him to the Rebbe's ohel, a proposal he could not refuse. This ohel is I'm uncomfortable saying the passing of the Rebbe, but then we're saying to go to ohel. So this is the grave site of Menachem Mendel Schneerson. I'm not sure how all this is going to pan out and why these details are coming out. But anyways, according to this story and wherever we're going after that, the very next day I drove the 2 hours to Manhattan, fetched Jason from his office. Together we made our way to the ohel. I have no idea how short this drive is from Manhattan to Queens. Don't care. And wherever that we're at, you could get there. I know from Pittsburgh, I think it's about 8 hours because they talk about it in Ask Mayor, or on the commercial, and they talk about it's not a commercial, it's a cartoon, and they talk about Mayor going up. If I'm correct, is for Gimmel Tammuz when they go to ohel, the gravesite resting place in Queens, New York, of the lubavitch Rebbe, the teacher Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the seventh Rebbe of the Chabad, because there's another Menachem Mendel that is the third, and nowadays there's Menachem Mendels everywhere. Blessed be God. So they go to this place, the ohel. There are more than one ohels, by the way. This is ohel lubavitch, and there's that's what they call it, but there would be other resting sites of Sadiqim, and I'm not so sure, but I think in general, even if you just go to a regular cemetery, some of them have like a building over there that is technically called an ohel, if I'm correct. Correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But anyway, so he picks him up, Jason, who we calling him, and Rabbi Eliezer Schneiderman, 23 years in Delaware. He know how to solve big homie's deal here. So you pick him up. After visiting the mikvah, which is this pool, it's like a little bit up from ohel. You go in there, you kind of, get in the ritual waters. I want to say a baptismal pool because, I mean, there's no one there dunking you. You dunk yourself, but it's like a pool. Baptismal, I don't know. This is not the word. I don't want to get into semantics, but the mikvah, I want to explain it to you if you don't understand. For all of you who already understand, thanks for being patient, and maybe send this to a friend who might be able to understand a little bit easier for you. But as we all just prepare together, we should know that one another is very important. So it goes on to the mikvah, and they sat down to write their panim, the pan. This is like, where you write the letter, you go into the ohel building, right? And teachings are playing from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and then they have a small bookstore. And then, you can go down, they got like, there's a certain way you conduct yourself in the building. It's in a cemetery, you know what I'm saying? So you kind of like change your shoes, and they got, a gartel for the guys, you know what I'm saying? A little thin string thing. And then they got the pens and the papers out there. So then the people, you went to mikvah, you prepared a little bit. You want to get a little assistance, a little help, come before Most High. So then you write your pan, Okay, there's probably a lot about writing upon. I'm not an expert in Chabad, but I do know a thing or two. You can look it up. They got the shlukim all over the place. They've been writing upon since they was a kid. In Phoenix, Arizona, the pan is the Mexican cake. This the pan, the pan. But we talking about the pan, the letter that's written. So the panim. Now, Jason asked the Rebbe for a bracha, this blessing, okay, and included a pledge to support our Chabad house when his business turns around. That very week, Jason received his first client, and from then on, business never stopped. By the end of the year, he received the company award for acquiring the most clients throughout the entire business. He made it a point to share the secret of his success with the fellow employees, and the next time I visited him at the firm, I actually noticed that many of his non-Jewish coworkers had pictures of the Rebbe in their offices. Still, I never heard a word about the pledge of support he had made at the ohel, and obviously I was loath to remind him. I was trying to think of my own Rebbe story. I kind of like zoned off for a minute because I'm just like, okay, all these people saying this, like, what's my Rebbe story? And then I started thinking about my family, and I started thinking about Yit Shavat, as I used to go regularly at that time for multiple years. And I remember asking for a blessing that I should be married and in a home with my wife and our children, with a child within a year. And nevertheless, that did happen. So let's review this one more time. So Jason gets his first client, then business never stopped. By the end of the year, he received the company award for acquiring the most clients throughout the entire business. This is the point where I started zoning off. He made it a point to share the secret of his success with his fellow employees. And the next time I visited him at the firm, I actually noticed that many of his non-Jewish coworkers had pictures of the Rebbe in their offices. Interesting. Still, I never heard a word about the pledge of support he had made at the ohel, and obviously I was loath to remind him. 3 years later, I was in a low place financially and in desperate need of immediate funds to pay some pressing expenses. Sitting in my office one day, I decided to write a letter to the Rebbe online to be printed and brought into the ohel, which most of us, that's a thing that you can do right now. You can just Google ohel lubavitch, go online, they will print it and bring it to this grave site, the resting place. Resting place, I don't know is the word. Passing was the word. Grave site, I think, is a word. Resting, it's hard for me to envision the Rebbe resting. There's a certain light that just came out right there that we connected with the people that understood that I don't have to give the definitions to of what the words mean. If you stayed with me for this long, for half an hour, then that was for you right there. That light, that ore, that panemius, that spark that's inside of you, true Hasidus. For some of you, Hasidut. So Rabbi Eliezer Snyderman later was in a low place financially, desperate, needed these funds. And in his office, he writes a letter to the Rebbe online and brought it to the ohel. After tearfully reciting Tehillim for some time, I wrote my pen the letter requesting this blessing, the bracha, that would allow me to continue my shlichus, his outreach, his messengership and hood of this Rebbe and teacher. 2 minutes after sending my pen, the letter, I received a surprise phone call from Jason requesting that I come visit him in his office as soon as I could make it. Not sure what to expect, I rode the bus to Manhattan in the following morning and took a taxi from the station directly to his office. After exchanging greetings, Jason ushered me in and without further ado handed me a package containing a very substantial sum of money. I was speechless. Noticing the astonishment on my face, Jason exclaimed, "I told the Rebbe I would take care of you." May we all continue to prepare nicely for Gimmel Tammuz. May we all see rebuild blessing in our life. Kihas told us that your intelligent soul says do it today, and your foolish soul says wait till tomorrow. And just like in that thought process, the Lubavitch Rebbe or one of the Siddiqim, however, that they were doing the things, they said that you should, he said, how would you know the answers to give these people? And he said he would go with the first thing that came to his mind. And the first thing that came to my mind was to show you that book after I decided not to. But let us always go with the first thing that comes to mind. God be with you, make his face shine upon you, grant you peace, sustenance, life, blessing, right, ohel, lubavitch. God bless you.